Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Columbus Wired podcast. I'm here with I'm Drew Sample, and I'm here with my co-host per usual, Mr. Andrew T. Evans.
Sup? We ready to talk some non-OSU football? Well, we are going to talk some OSU football.
Sorry about that. That was a little intense.
Whoa.
Should we start over again after?
No. Let's keep going, man.
Keep going.
It's all part of the Columbus Wired podcast.
Hey, it's wired. It's wired. See, I'm wired. I'm wired in here.
You are wired.
It's another overreaction Sunday. I tell you what. Before we recorded this call, I called Andy on the way to the office, and I was overreacting for sure, but I still feel that I may be justified in my overreaction, and we're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll talk you off the ledge. It's cool, like I always do.
Lots of big games yesterday. Lots of big games.
Yeah.
We watched Texas beats, or I'm sorry, Texas didn't beat anybody. They they lost to Georgia. Sloppy game between Bama and Tennessee, and Kurt Signetti is just coming into the Big Ten and saying, hey, I'm the team to beat here because I'm taking everybody's lunch money that I'm playing. We're about to get the first game day most likely in Indiana and Bloomington in their next big game there. I think it's pretty exciting what's going on with them. We're going to discuss the Big Ten landscape, and then, what's going on with the Buckeyes. Lots of talk at the rumor mill, especially after the pathetic performance from our so-called defense.
And, of course, we're going to screw the blue.
Oh, how could I forget?
You can't forget about screwing the blue, dude.
The Fighting Illini sent out a message to what do they call themselves? The Wolverine Nation? Who cares? Because
screw them.
They can't beat anybody except for USC.
and a fluke win against Minnesota.
Yeah. That they should not have won.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it.
Let's get into it, baby. Let's do it.
There was something we didn't cover during the game because there was so much.
You talking about the OSU-Oregon game?
The OSU-Oregon game. It still haunts me. It haunted me this weekend. It haunted me while I watched every single game. And then I was thinking about, this team would probably beat us. This team would probably beat us. This team would probably beat us. The way we played against Oregon, right? Like I'm overreacting the whole time. Just like, I wish our defense played that good like Georgia's is playing right now or Indiana's played.
Yeah.
But there was some talk that I didn't really even notice. I saw a penalty. I don't even remember how it necessarily affected the game because I drank a little too much and I was just really disappointed during that game. But there was a substitution. Dan Lanning, I saw multiple clips of him pretty much saying he knew how to exploit this rule and he exploited the rule, which hats off to him. I think that's brilliant that he did. And now because the Ducks, there's this loophole rule, and now NCAA is changing this rule. So, Andy, get into this. What is this rule? What happened? What's going on?
So, essentially, in the very end of the game, there was 10 seconds left, and Ohio State had the ball, and it was 3rd and 25 at this point.
Because that awesome offensive pass interference.
Because of pass interference that, a lot of people, including guys like Joel Klatt, sounded off and said that was not pass interference. I honestly disagree. I felt Jeremiah Smith pushed off, but that's me in my old school.
You just hate the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I do. It's because I hate Ohio State. And it's, get off my damn lawn, you kids, and this, you should just be allowed to, push people away from you. No, you should
Physical
not.
Game. It's a physical game.
It is a physical game now, and that is the part that disgusts me about where we are at when it comes to this whole hand fighting, hand checking down the field. in the Texas-Georgia game, which we're going to talk about as to why the fans were throwing trash on the field. That was part of that whole, these guys are now allowed to just sit there and push each other and grab jerseys and hand fight
you
and do
can't
all
make a
this stuff.
tackle if your head comes down at all, even though you're supposed to use your shoulder.
And there were
your head's right
targeting,
here. And,
targeting things that happened in that game. But getting back to this substitution rule. So essentially what happened, it's 3rd and 25 for Ohio State because, yes, Jeremiah Smith was called for pass interference, and there was 10 seconds left on the clock. Ohio State ran a quick play, and Will Howard threw over towards the sideline to Jeremiah Smith. The ball was knocked down. It was deflected. However, prior to that, Dan Lanning purposely had put 12 men on the field for that play. And what happened then was, even though they ended up knocking down the pass, Dan Lanning played a scenario to where if Ohio State were to have completed it, they would be called for the substitution infraction. It would not have counted. It would have given Ohio State 5 yards, and it would run extra time off the clock. So Dan Lanning played the odds and said, well, if Ohio State potentially gets a big gain on this play, I'm going to take it away and only give them 5 yards, and it's going to take some time off the clock. And it was a brilliant move. It absolutely was a brilliant move. He exploited the rule. And so then what happened? It's now 3rd and 20, and Ohio State only has 6 seconds left on the clock. And then we all know what happened on the next play. Will Howard runs it up the middle, slides. There's even, he supposedly slid with like 1 second left. And where was Ryan Day? Time management, right? That's a whole different discussion. But then time elapsed off the clock. That was it. Game over. Oregon wins. Well, I asked Dan Lanning afterwards, yeah, did you do that on purpose? And he's like, yeah, I did.
Initially he didn't say no. That was kind of how he.
Yeah, he didn't say no, but essentially, I mean, yes. Yeah, we're all conjecturing that he was like, yeah, I did. So you're right. He didn't go, yeah, I did. But essentially, yeah, the way that he essentially phrased his answer, it seemed that he indeed did it on purpose. And so that's where now the whole discussion about him playing chess as opposed to Ryan Day playing checkers conversation comes into play. So the NCAA then goes, okay, all right, Danny, you pulled a fast one. Kind of like in Tommy Boy near the end where he fools Dan Aykroyd, who plays Ray Zielinski, the auto parts king. And Dan Aykroyd looks at him and goes, all right, you pulled a fast one on me, or you pulled one by me, or slid one by me, or something like that. Savor the flavor because it won't happen again. Well, that's basically what the NCAA said to Dan Lanning. All right, you pulled a fast one. You got one by us. Good for you. We're now going to change the rules. So this is now on the NCAA's official website. This is how the rule reads. So after the 2-minute timeout in either half, and we all know the 2-minute timeout, which is the 2-minute warning. They can call it the 2-minute timeout, but it's the 2-minute warning now in college football, which hadn't existed until this year. This is the first year for it. 2-minute timeout at the end of the second quarter and the fourth quarter, or the end of the first half, second half. If the defense commits a substitution foul and 12 or more players are on the field and participate in the down, officials will penalize the defense for the foul and, at the option of the offended team, reset the game clock back to the time displayed at the snap. Now, so they would have given Ohio State 5 extra yards, and they would have put those 4 seconds back on the clock. Would that have mattered anything? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It probably would have given them at least one more opportunity to run a play, and then they have that extra timeout. And if it's not a pass to the boundary like they tried with the 6 seconds left to get the ball to the sideline and get out of bounds, they throw it up the middle. Maybe they go to Jeremiah Smith again. He gets a 10, 15-yard gain, gets tackled. There's 3 seconds left. They call a timeout. Maybe that puts them in field goal range. They kick the game-winning field goal. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? But that's now, because of what Dan Lanning did, that is now the new rule per the NCAA. And yeah, I mean, why why didn't they have this rule before? Because now they do the 10-second runoff like they do in the pros. They've been doing that now for the last couple of years, where, if the offense commits a penalty with like under 2 minutes to play, then the defense can say, or the coach of the coach of the other team that's on defense can say, yeah, run 10 seconds off the clock. They do that now. So why didn't they say, okay, hold on, but what if a penalty happens against the defense to the offense? We should kind of do the same thing. Now, they're not adding 10 seconds. They're just putting the time back to the original time. Where was that before? So, but once again, he exploited the rule.
Doing a very good job of saying
tip of the cap, and yeah,
I still, it's one of those things to me that the NCAA, there's all this talk that college football needs to be taken away from NCAA because they're not running it properly.
Yeah, the NCAA is I mean, they're a laughing stock right now. They have been for years. They had an opportunity when the lawsuit was first filed against them by Charles, I think it was Charles, or was it Ed O'Bannon, whatever, from UCLA, the basketball player, when he filed that lawsuit years ago about college athletes receiving compensation. They had a while to try and figure it out. And even now, it's obviously so far out of control. The transfer portal, they just took away national letters of intent. College athletes now no longer have to sign a national letter of intent to play a sport.
I mean, why would we want to teach college athletes anything about accountability?
It's continuing. They are just diving deeper into the mud, and it's just quicksand. They're sinking rapidly, and they have no idea how to get out. And they are just continuing to cater to these college athletes, and they're asking the federal government for help. They're like, guys, you need to help us out. You need to step up and pass some legislation for NCAA so we have, a solid, rock solid, this is how it is. This is the feds. The feds are telling the NCAA, this is the rule. These are how things should be, so on and so forth.
Does the NFL have that?
What do you mean? As far as federal legislation?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
I just, to me, like to say, we need the federal government to do something.
And that's, I mean, yeah, the NCAA.
They're not going to, I mean, yeah, the federal government's done really great work for everybody.
Well, the feds are like, dude, we've got enough on our plate.
Victims.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, look, we've got, Ukraine-Russian war. We've got Israel and Hamas. We've got hurricanes going on. We're trying to deal with a bunch of different stuff right now. We don't have time to jump in the middle of your little indecisiveness. You're a big boy, NCAA. Figure it out. And Charlie Baker and his crew, they can't. They have no idea what's going on.
Who would fire him?
I don't know. That's a great question. I'm assuming the NCAA has some sort of board of electors or regents.
Do they? I think
I don't know. I mean, who appointed him? Whoever appointed Charlie Baker as the president of the NCAA, I would assume has the power to fire him. But I don't know. That's a great question. That is, I should know that, but I don't.
I don't. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
really care. I think the NCAA is a joke. I think it's been a joke. I think
It's it's
I
it's it's only going to move towards, I have been saying this for years. The Big Ten and the SEC right now are building up power to where the two of them are going to combine forces, and they're just going to completely split away from the NCAA, and they're going to go do their own thing where they can directly pay kids to play sports.
I mean,
That's been my thought for years, and I'm
I'm
sticking
okay
with
with it. I just think that something else needs done than what's going on now. The NCAA is just making a problem worse.
it. Yeah, yeah,
And
they are. They are. You're right.
speaking of which, we're gonna have some fun with this. Clearly, since SEC officials, well, first off, the big game of the night, Texas, Georgia.
Yes.
It was, everyone's saying how good Texas is. And I'm like, I don't think they're that good. Who'd they beat? Michigan?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
Michigan.
funny in hindsight where we see a game happen and we're like, oh my God, they're for real.
Yeah,
Texas is for real. They just slaughtered Michigan in the big house,
but it
worked
was
them
really
like crazy.
when you
And we
look at
see
it,
what we saw last night, and it's like, oh, maybe not.
they got beat almost just as bad as they beat Michigan. I mean, so they beat
Yeah.
them. They beat up UTSA, LA Monroe, Mississippi State, who got their ass kicked by Toledo, and then an overrated Oklahoma team.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, and then Oklahoma was getting smashed yesterday by, was it South Florida? Or no,
yeah,
South Carolina. South Carolina
Oklahoma's
absolutely destroyed Oklahoma
1 and
yesterday.
3 in the SEC. So their one victory was against a 1 and 3 SEC team. Georgia comes out, they're up 23-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
Just dominating fashion. The only team that can beat Kirby Smart is Alabama. Um, Second half, Texas gets some life back. They're starting to drive the ball. I don't think they get a score though. Uh,
I know it was, well, what we're about to get into at that point in the game, it was like 23-8.
okay, so no, they
So
did get a score and they got the
they
2 point
scored and they went
conversion.
for two and
So
they got
then
it. Yeah.
so then like Georgia, so Texas starts to get momentum back. But in the first half, they pull Quinn Ewers, they put in Arch Manning, and I thought it was like the whole talk has been it's Quinn Ewers' team. It's Quinn Ewers' team. So then in a big game when you're only down three scores. No,
Yeah,
I
it
don't
was
even think they were down
20. It
three
was
scores at
23
the
to
time.
nothing.
I don't even think it was when they pulled Arch, when they pulled Ewers.
Okay.
But even if
I
it
can't
was,
remember the exact point, but I
I
do
don't.
remember them
Yeah,
pulling
I
him.
just
Yeah.
remember. So they pull Ewers, they put Arch in. Arch turns the ball over. I think there was 3 turnovers for Texas in the first half, and I'm thinking, man, I wish OSU's defense played like this when they went into Eugene. Where was that defense? We were supposed to have the best defense in the country. Georgia's defense looks awesome right now, and they've struggled with some teams that they shouldn't have struggled with. They gave up a ton of points to Alabama, but now they're looking like dogs against this Texas team.
Yeah,
Where
they
was
were
that?
dogs.
Where was that for us? So that's what I'm thinking. It's because it's overreactionary Saturday night because I'm looking at the test. But I didn't get to watch my team today, so they didn't get a redemption. So to me, Ryan Day still sucks, and our offensive line is garbage, and our defense is garbage, and they're just overreacting, because that's how we should have won. And so then I don't even know. I got lost in my overreaction. So Manny goes in, he turns the ball over. Texas comes out, gets some momentum, and then there's this play where it's a bad call by the officials. The officials are kind of making some bad calls, and I don't know. I had to listen to it. We were doing trick or treating, so at earlier, and so I was listening to the game on the way home from trick or treating, and I didn't get to necessarily see the officiating, but I don't think it was as egregious as it was in the second half because it definitely I'm not a Texas fan. I don't like Texas. I've been saying Steve Sarkisian's overrated, but I honestly don't even really like Georgia. I did have some money on Georgia and I won, but I don't like Georgia. You know what I mean? I just thought, like, how are they that big of underdogs against Texas? Texas isn't that good. Like, Texas, I didn't think belonged in the playoff last year. The only reason why they were in the playoff is because they beat Alabama, and then they beat they beat Oklahoma State, who wasn't a good team, and then they got embarrassed by Washington. I mean, it was they didn't belong in there. They were the team that clearly didn't belong in the playoff. Whatever. So basically Georgia throws an interception. They run it back to like the 19.
No, I think it was like around the 10-yard line.
Yeah, it was a big gain.
Yeah.
And then they call defensive pass interference. And every time I look at it, it was so bad offensive pass interference that I was like, yeah, he's not even playing the ball. Wait, he's the wide receiver. But if it was like a defender, he's not playing the ball. That's an automatic 15-yard penalty, automatic first down. So then, but they call it, they call the play back because it's defensive pass interference. And Austin goes nuts. They're throwing shit on the field. Georgia's team gets moved away from the stands because they're throwing so much garbage. And while they're picking up garbage, the refs meet and they're like, hey, just kidding. Just kidding. That was that was actually an interception. And now they run it back. And it's just like, what precedent are you making? Okay, yes, it was a bad call. They shouldn't have made that call. But you made that call. And if fans are just going to throw trash on the field, like, is this going to be a thing this season now?
You know, that very well could be a dangerous precedent being set. You're absolutely right, dude. Here's the thing. First off, I felt that it was a legit interception. You're absolutely right. The defensive back had his eye on the ball and was playing it. And the wide receiver had his back. Yeah. And he was, as far as what I could tell, and now here we go. I'm not going to go off on too long of a tangent of it, but this all goes into my argument about how they need to clean up the whole hand fighting, hand checking, pushing off, and doing all this stuff. But to me, the Georgia wide receiver pushed off on the Texas cornerback who
pushed
made
off,
the
so
pick.
he's more available to get that.
Yeah, and the guy still made the pick, even though the Georgia wide receiver was pushing the Texas cornerback. The cornerback still made the pick and like returned it down to like the 10-yard line. That all needs to be cleaned up. I'm sorry. What happened to illegal contact? I mean, there is pass interference that they still obviously call. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. But I think because they've allowed all of this hand fighting and defensive backs allowed to grab wide receivers' jerseys and then wide receivers pushing off on defensive backs, it's all mucked up. It's all mucked up. You've got, pass interference calls being called against guys like Jeremiah Smith that I felt was justified, that a lot of people out there are saying, especially Buckeye fans, and I get it, you in fact, when I was watching a game with my boy Jeremy Royer, he was like, that wasn't pass interference. What, you're not allowed to, do the 5-yard chuck within the first 5 yards. You're not allowed to like make contact. It's one thing to make contact, but to push off. Jeremiah Smith used his arms, extended them to create space. That is clearly offensive pass interference. What the guy last night was doing, the Georgia wide receiver, he too was extending his hands and pushing the Texas defensive back away. Now, I understand the Texas defensive back, once again, also had his hands kind of outstretched and was kind of, trying to push the Georgia wide receiver's hands away. But once again, he still made the pick. But the fact that the refs called it offensive or defensive pass interference in the first place was stupid. And then secondly, went back and changed the call because, ostensibly, you think that after the fans started throwing stuff onto the field, according to the broadcast, Chris Fowler said it was the student section were all throwing a bunch of water bottles on the field, whatever it was. They're throwing stuff onto the field, and then the refs are like, "Oh crap, we may want to like decide that this was not pass interference, and we should change the call to make the fans happy." And that's what they did. At least they changed the call. Now, was it because the fans were being unruly and throwing stuff on the field? And they were like, if we don't want to die after this game, we better change this call, or else
we better call
we're going to
get
an angry. We're going to get an angry mob out there that are going to want to kill us in the parking lot after the game. And then there were questionable targeting calls, 2 questionable targeting calls. And I know you were talking about like the schematics.
They were saying on TV that I didn't like, well, whenever you lower your head, it's like, well, the running back's lowering his head. Is that targeting?
Right.
Because he's leading with his head. He's putting his crown down. How is he supposed to I mean, you're supposed to drop to hit your shoulder. What is he supposed to do with his head?
Yeah.
It's
this, you know.
It's connected.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to. Right
you're
there.
You're supposed to take him to the down. You're supposed to, coddle him to the ground, put a blanket on him, and read him a bedtime story. That's what my cousin. Shout out to Ben. He said that joke.
Who did?
My cousin Ben.
Ah, okay. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah, I get it that concussions are a thing, and we are trying.
It's for the safety of the players.
We're trying to make the game safer, but there is still a human element when it comes to physics of how the human body works. And to say, you can't do this, you should do it that way. Sometimes that's just not reality. That's just not how the human body works. So, yeah, I think it was a dangerous precedent, though, that Texas or the refs set by changing the call just because some fans were acting stupid. So,
yeah, I think
this all goes back to the NCAA, trying to get their head out of their ass when it comes to things.
But I think, again, it's like the SEC officials just didn't look good. And I think there was some weird, the Bama lost in a very sloppy road game too to Tennessee, and there was some weird ref calling in that game from the highlights I saw. Like it was.
Well, and you know what? I heard a lot of people say the same thing about the Oregon game. Oh man, the refs sucked, and I'm so pissed off about the refs. And there were some dumb calls that were made by the Oregon refs,
fair.
But
I thought it was pretty fair. Those are Big Ten refs.
I didn't see anything overly egregious. Once again, I felt I think that Jeremiah Smith pass interference call has Buckeye Nation hot, and guys like Joel Klatt disagreeing. And when somebody like Joel Klatt disagrees, it's like, well, dude, Joel Klatt, that's Joel frickin' Klatt. He's saying it wasn't pass interference, so I'm going to agree with him. I disagree. I completely disagree. So, but that's my personal opinion, and you probably, Buckeye Nation can hate me for it, but that's how I feel. And I don't know. It's just
I think Joel Klatt stinks.
I don't mind Joel Klatt. I've never had anything against him, but I hear there are always going to be people out there that you dislike for whatever reason, and other people love them. So.
What I didn't like was the amount of hands that came up in front of cameras during the
Indiana-Nebraska game. Yeah.
It was like there were so many hands that kept coming up. It's like, Fox, get it together.
Well, I tell you what, yesterday was an interesting day for college football. It was one of those days where we walked into the weekend. On paper, it was a banger of a weekend. Texas, Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, 2 SEC games that are not only going to decide the SEC, landscape to a certain extent, but college football playoff in general. And then you had, the rodents in Illinois, and one game, though, that we all kind of had our eye on, like, all right, let's see how this turns out. Let's see if Indiana's for real.
Let's see if Nebraska's for real.
Or who's for real? Indiana or Nebraska? We got our answer in spades yesterday.
I've I was on them last year because I thought they had a good defense, but they didn't have Kurt Signetti. And I remember listening to Kurt Signetti because he made James Madison. He took them from an FCS school to an FBS school. He went and he won at Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
Gooey pooey.
That was where he started out after, but so his dad coached his dad coached at a few places. Dad used to, I believe, be the head coach at West Virginia, gave Nick Saban a job, which is when he first met Nick Saban. Nick Saban takes his job at Alabama from after his pathetic run in the NFL. And Kurt Signetti becomes his head of recruiting. And so those first few teams, Ingram, all these dudes, a lot of that was Kurt Signetti recruiting is the story that's being told by Joel Klatt. But through Kurt Signetti, listen to him on Pat McAfee and other stuff like that. A lot of teams apparently, the rumor is a lot of teams didn't want to hire him because he's in his 60s. And they're like, well, we don't know how this guy's going to do. But so then he gets to Indiana, and everybody kind of has this crappy attitude about Indiana football on campus. It's basketball season. So he gets tired of people asking well, how are you going to make a difference? And so he's at this, they ask him again, and he's in the basketball arena for the game. And he's pretty much is Google me. All I do is win. We're going to win here. Purdue sucks. OSU sucks. Michigan sucks, and we're going to kick all their asses next year.
Now, he didn't really say that.
He said he's going to kick their asses.
He did say that, but he didn't say they suck. But obviously,
yeah,
yes.
But
still, yeah.
He pretty much says that, and we're going to kick their asses.
And right now, Kurt Signetti's backing it up.
He's backing it up. He took a lot of players with him from JMU. His offensive and defensive coordinators, he hired at D2 football at IUP. They've been with him the whole time. He says they only paid him $6,000 when they first took jobs. Now he's now they're going to be hot commodities. The dude is he is kind of like the football players coach. He's talking about I don't want to waste time with meetings. I don't want to if we can get the work done in a shorter amount of time, that's what we're going to do. And by me respecting your time, I need you to bring it. And he's just his players just play with fire, and they're just steamrolling every team they're playing. And I'm man, isn't that what the Buckeyes should be doing? Isn't that the attitude the Buckeyes should be having? And I don't. And hey, it was overreaction Saturday. I'm sitting around, I'm watching just Indiana just pulverize this team. I'm not even really, it's I'm working and I'm following. I'm they're scoring again. They're scoring again. And it started out kind of back and forth. But then their starting quarterback, their transfer from, what did he transfer from, Tennessee?
Who, Indiana's?
Yeah.
Curtis Rourke?
Yeah.
He's from OU.
OU.
Being Ohio University.
Oh.
He grew up in Canada.
Who am I thinking of?
I don't know.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. But the guy looks like he was recruited by an SEC team. He hurts his thumb, and then the second string guy comes in. He's balling out. This is Indiana against Nebraska. We were just talking about is the big red machine back. I was saying last week, they got a tough Nebraska team. They better come. And it's just how tough are they? They just got their ass kicked.
Indiana has, without a doubt now, I mean, they've thrown a wrench into the landscape of the Big Ten Conference because nobody was expecting Indiana to start off 7-0, and they're in the driver's seat along with Oregon and Penn State, who had a bye yesterday. But
they got Washington at home next week. I bet they score. They crush them next week. I mean, you look
at Indiana's schedule, and I remember us talking about Indiana.
They have an easy schedule
before the Northwestern game, and we were like, yeah, They should beat Northwestern, but after that, they've got Nebraska, they've got Washington, they've
Michigan
got the
State,
Rodents, they've
Michigan.
got you can throw Michigan State in there. They've
Thankfully,
got Ohio State. So you're all of a sudden like, okay, we're probably going to cool off on the Indiana talk, but it's still ramped up and red hot.
Now it's like that's a
after that
team.
huge win over Nebraska.
They're a scary team. They got Michigan
Yeah.
at home. They're going to
Yep.
steamroll Michigan. If they steamroll Michigan at home, and then
They've got Washington and Michigan out
at home. Yeah, and I think they got to go to Michigan State. That could be a tough environment. It's to be announced. Could be a night game, but I mean, I could.
And then they come to Columbus.
Yeah, but I think that you can't have a sloppy performance like we did against Oregon and expect to get the W against Kurt Signetti in Indiana.
Well, and
blood.
You were like, dude, why isn't Ohio State playing like Indiana?
I was
like
these,
Ohio State. What the hell is your problem? You should be smashing people like Indiana was doing. And I said, hold on, Drew. Let's not forget, okay? 52-6 against Akron, 56-0 against Western Michigan, 45-14 against Marshall, and then 2 straight games where they only allowed a touchdown, 38-7 Michigan State, 35-7 Iowa. However, the most recent thing, and this is a human element, the most recent thing that happens, you obviously are going to go back to and remember the most, right?
Yeah.
And that was let's face it, a lackluster performance that we saw Ohio State put up against Oregon, at least from a defensive.
The now number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, and Oregon is more than likely going to be the number 1 team in the country when the new polls come out. But nonetheless, I was like, let's hold on. It's not like Ohio State has looked like garbage all year long. They've looked good, and they were beating the crap out of the teams that they rightfully should have beaten the crap out of. However, once again, we're a victim of recency, and obviously we're going to look at the way that they played against Oregon and go, well, dude, this Ohio State team, God, why aren't they doing what Indiana's doing? Why aren't they crushing teams? And because now Indiana smacking Nebraska 56-7. Now Ohio State fans are going to be like, well, you guys better, you guys, if Indiana's beaten Nebraska 56-7, Ohio State should win 100-7.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you they're not. And I am concerned after that Oregon game, the stuff that we heard Ryan Day say throughout the week about that team practicing with an edge. You and I were both there when he said it on a Wednesday at the Woody.
And then we got Josh Fryer saying guys are scary. I don't like to play in front of a big.
And then, well, the funny thing is that that guy didn't even play in the game, and Ohio State still lost. So, but nonetheless. Yes. Am I a little concerned about?
I'm so good. I can't wait for this challenge. Getting embarrassed. I think that OSU hopefully.
And here's the thing. Once again, though, we say Ohio State got embarrassed, but they were still in that game. They lost by 1 point on the road in Autzen Stadium, which is arguably one of the toughest college football stadiums to play, and they still had an opportunity to win at the end of the game. But as we talked about earlier, all the crap that happened, whatever. It didn't happen. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. But the fact that Ohio State, we did not see the best Ohio State football team I think we can see. And I think everybody agrees with that. So the fact that they went out to Oregon and lost by 1 point in Autzen Stadium still says something about this Ohio State team, that if we do see a team that has truly practiced with an edge that week, we are going to see them put up these, 45-7 ball games. But what kind of Nebraska team are we going to see this Saturday? Are we going to see an angry, humiliated, pissed off team, or are we going to see a demoralized, our season's done?
I don't know, but I think that we should see a fired up OSU team that
we should
doesn't matter, and then OSU has to make a statement because they got to go into Happy Valley the next week and play probably an
Yeah,
overrated Penn State team, but still an undefeated Penn State team.
still an undefeated Penn State team. Absolutely. So,
So I don't know. But I think that Indiana being good strengthens our schedule. If we win out, it makes us look more dominant. We could get, a second crack at Oregon. But we got to win out. And, Oregon, they took care of business. They went out to Purdue, handled business Friday night. They still looked pretty dominant. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, we need
however, them rodents.
them rodents. I was going to say they played against an Illinois team that had the ugliest throwback uniforms ever.
Oh my God, I love those throwbacks.
Ugliest throwback.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they're disgusting.
Well, they were paying homage to Red Grange, man. Dude, those helmets to make them look like the old Leatherhead helmet.
I know.
That was awesome. I actually thought they looked pretty sweet. But
sure you did.
You want to talk about right now, Ohio State.
How bad is Michigan? Michigan outgained. They had way more yards than Illinois. Illinois only had 80 passing yards.
Wow, did they really?
That's it. They had 80 passing yards to Jack Tuttle's 208. Jack Tuttle had one interception.
How in the world did Jack Tuttle have 208 passing yards? That dude, I saw at one point he was like 7 of 11 for 62 yards. He ended with 208.
208, and Michigan also turned the ball over quite a bit. So they turned the ball over 3 times to Illinois 0. Illinois had 0 fumbles, 0 interceptions. They only punted it 4 times. They only took 1 sack. And they only had 6 yards in penalties.
Well, for Michigan to only put up 7
penalties.
points and to outgain Illinois, that's sad.
Yeah, they had 50 yards in penalties. They each had 6 penalties to 61, but pretty much it was a running attack. Total yards, it was 322 to Illinois' 267.
Oh my God.
Michigan ran 70 plays versus Illinois' 57, and time of possession I can't find because Yahoo stinks.
If you just went and looked at those stats without seeing the final score, you'd be like, okay, I'm sure Michigan won this game by 10 points, a touchdown, 10 points. Yeah, Michigan won this game. That is perplexing and mind-boggling.
Well, the 3 turnovers didn't help, but it's just ugly. It's just ugly football. They have
Michigan is ugly. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know
they are
in the blue, but
unfortunately, who knows how long Moore's going to be coach. I think they're probably going to dump him fast, but I think too, like the Michigan's biggest issue, usually when you win a national championship, your recruiting does really well. It did not for Michigan. I think there was a lot of clout. I think Harbaugh not being there. So poor Sharon Moore. He's probably not going to have a job.
Poor Sharon Moore. Yeah. Screw you, Sharon Moore. And screw you, Blue.
So Michigan continues to be terrible and embarrassing. An embarrassing shell of themselves. I mean, we covered the Big Ten landscape. I mean, there is like in OSU news, there is some rumors. There's some beef going on with Jim Knowles and Larry Johnson. Still some. I feel like it's just fallout from a poor defensive performance.
Well, of course, and whenever we see, I mean, that was Ohio State. One of the best defenses in the country, and they looked like crap. I mean, there was 0, we talked about this already, but whenever you see the defense, I mean, the defensive line, 0 pressure. And at that, there's a lot of flack right now being put on this defensive line. And yeah, the rumors are swirling that Larry and Jim are not getting along. They never have. They've never seen eye to eye. They have completely different philosophy from one another. What the approach should be defensively when it comes to the defensive line. You know, I've heard rumors out there that Jim Knowles, and we know that Jim Knowles likes to run like more of a 3-3-5 style defense where it's safety driven.
Yeah.
And Larry Johnson is like, no, we're not going to run 3 defensive linemen with a jack. We're going to run 4 down linemen. That is what I want to see from this defense. And that's how we're going to approach it. So there's this, you know, this dissension between the two as far as that approach. We saw that Jim Knowles tried to use Jack Sawyer as the jack in 2022, and it just didn't work out. However, we're still seeing it. We're still seeing Jack Sawyer standing up. That's the jack position. The jack stands up and either drops back into coverage or goes in and rushes. However, Jack Sawyer rushes the quarterback every single time. You're not fooling now the offense and the offensive coordinator if you're standing up, but because Larry Johnson wants there to be 4 down linemen, but Jim Knowles is saying, okay, I'll fix your wagon. You're going to send 4 defensive linemen out there. And this is just me conjecturing, folks. Don't think that I know, you know, I've heard this personally or I have an inside source that's telling me this. This is just me going off my cuff that Jim Knowles is saying, okay, then fine, I'll go ahead and utilize Jack Sawyer as the jack. I'll stand him up, but I'll just call a defensive play where he rushes in, and that's that. So if this is all true, they have to figure it out. They got to get together and figure it out. And who's your head coach? Ryan Day. Ryan Day, you have to make some sort of decision. But here's the quandary. Jim Knowles, you're my defensive coordinator, and you are the coach of the defense. However, Larry Johnson, you're my associate head coach. So now you've got this to-do between the two, where if Larry Johnson was merely the defensive line coach, I'm sure Ryan Day would go, well, now, Larry, Jim is the defensive coordinator here. He's making the calls. But now you've got Larry going, well, I'm the associate head coach, bitch. You know, you made me your right-hand man. So that actually trumps Jim's defensive coordinator position over me. I trump him. He don't trump me. So what are you going to do, Jimmy? What are you going to do, Larry? What are you going to do, little Rai?
Am I overreactionary just like looking at Kurt Signetti and the way he runs his team, the way he's built his culture? It definitely feels
urban-esque.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you know what's going on, and I think Day, it felt like that year 1.
Yeah.
But I feel like year 2 was like a weird year, and then like ever since Justin Fields left, it hasn't felt the same.
Yeah, I mean, 2020 definitely that was kind of the culmination, you know. And it's almost like, though, there was still that pervasive thought from Urban being here, right? Yeah. Like his philosophy, his ideals, his attitude, whatever you want to say, was still kind of lingering with those 2019 and 2020 players, even though Justin Fields never played for him. But it was still kind of like his essence, his presence was still being felt. Yeah, and now it is definitely Ryan Day's essence and presence, and we are seeing the difference between the two coaches.
Well, I'm wondering too, like how much of the hot, like I feel like the pressure from the Buckeye Nation, losing to Michigan 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
That like that it changes the dynamic, man. It just does, and I think it's like and until he atones by beating Michigan, and he needs to beat the shit out of them the way 2018 style.
Yeah.
That's going to solve a lot of issues.
Even 2019 style, he went up there and beat the crap out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but you know what I mean? Like 2019, 2018, like pre-pandemic ass beatings to Michigan needs to come back. Otherwise, especially with this Michigan team, who
let me tell you what. Yeah, well, I think Buckeye Nation, for the most part, would just be happy to see a win.
No, not at this point. Not with as bad as Michigan is playing.
Well, there you go. There's someone like me. I'm like, hey man, just go beat Michigan. Do I want to see an ass stomping? Yeah, we all do. But
because we know Indiana's going to give them an ass stomping.
Well, but then there you go. So now all of a sudden we're being compared with Indiana and what they're doing.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like I was naturally doing it. I was naturally doing it during the game yesterday.
This is nuts.
It is overreactionary. It is overreactionary. But if Indiana goes in and, I mean, the way they stomped Nebraska at home, they're going to do that to Michigan. By that time, if they don't, then it doesn't matter. But if I'm overreacting like this,
other people are too.
Other people are too. And I know I'm being ridiculous. And I know it's ridiculous. Like, people are like, their steam has to die down, right? It's like, man, it didn't die down at James Madison. They lost to Appalachian State, and that was one of the few losses they had in like a couple years. And it was after that game day there, and it was like, let us play the bowl game, and it was like crazy emotional energy. But, man, I just, Indiana could lose next week. Who the hell knows? I mean, they might not, but they could go out there and score another 56 points and dominate whoever it is they're playing. We already said it and already.
Washington. They got Washington at home this weekend.
Washington, when they travel to Big Ten schools, traditional Big Ten schools, they do not look good. They look way better at home, just like USC. UCLA always looks like crap. But I just think that I don't know. I don't. They stop if they stop Washington. They're really building momentum because they're going to make a bigger deal, even though Washington's not very good. But we have the filleting sports media that just loves to. I mean, they want to hype up Indiana, man. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you hype Indiana? They're blowing teams out. They've been terrible for years.
Absolutely.
No start since the 1940s. And it's all run by a 62-year-old guy who most people haven't even heard of. The only reason why I did is because I watched Pat McAfee. And it was like they did the game day there, and it was like this crazy, fun environment. Like, it was really cool.
I get it. Like, don't get me wrong.
Sending out text messages to the student body. You all need to show up and watch your team beat the hell out of this team. Like, just saying, like, he's like the player's coach in college, and he's like old school, and he's just like, we're going to beat the hell out of them. We're going to kick their ass.
Well, yeah.
He goes on stage after the Big Noon Cook-Off, doesn't even shake Urban's hand, gives him his left hand. He did have something in his hand, like it was like an awkward, but it was still, I noticed it.
They did this? Because I didn't see it.
He did this.
Yeah. Like
he did that. He had something in his hand, but I was like, you don't even shake Urban Meyer's hand. And meanwhile, before they bring him up on stage, he probably heard them say, well, maybe just a one-loss Ohio State, and was like, man, fuck these dudes. Because that's his attitude.
Well, that's what they said.
Yeah. Matt Leinart said, oh, yeah, they could make the playoff with just a one-loss to Ohio State. You're already assuming that OSU is going to beat Kurt Signetti?
It's comments like that piss me off when people assume that kind of crap.
Yeah.
Because what are you talking about, Matt Leinart? Right now, Indiana looks for real, and you're already chalking up a loss to Ohio State. I get it. The game's in Columbus.
It is Matt Leinart.
Still. But yeah, I mean, see, I hate that crap. I hate
it. Because, Kurt Signetti is going to take that to his locker room. And
absolutely.
That is going to fire up that team to go beat the hell out of Washington, beat the hell, be undefeated going into OSU.
Yes.
We're going to make OSU the underdog in this game.
Yeah. I mean, because even though Ryan Day didn't say it, Urban Meyer didn't say it,
but it's Big Noon Kickoff. Very Columbus. You got Brady Quinn from Columbus, Ohio. Brady Quinn was paying tons of respect, but then you got like Urban Meyer paying tons of respect, just tons of respect. And then I think it was Matt. It was one of the guys that was. I'm pretty sure it was Matt Leinart because he's kind of stupid anyway. So I think he. It's on YouTube. I'll send you the link. And it's like I was watching it before the show and I was like, what? Oh, this is not.
So now, but Matt Leinart said that after they just got done pummeling Nebraska.
Yeah.
About Indiana.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Before Kurt Cignetti comes on stage.
Yeah, before, like, we just witnessed Indiana beat the ever-living tar out of Nebraska, and you're still making a comment that, well, this could be a one-loss Indiana team that could go to the playoff.
It could be an undefeated Indiana team. It could be an undefeated Indiana team. Just because they're going into Ohio State doesn't mean they can't beat them. And I just think that OSU has been, like, hopefully this loss was good, but OSU has been a team that could get upset. I mean, they're definitely more talented than Indiana, but I don't know if they want it as bad.
And
they don't feel like they do.
Mindset. Right now, mindset.
Yeah.
And this Saturday's game against Nebraska is going to be very telling what kind of mindset they're in. And yeah, we are all going to be judging Ohio State's performance based on what Indiana did to Nebraska.
And it's going to continue.
Again, it's crazy.
It's going to continue.
And then, because Indiana plays Michigan
before us. And then they play us after Michigan.
Yeah.
And then if we lose to Indiana, and then even if we beat Indiana, but then we don't beat Michigan at home the way Indiana beats Michigan, we're still going to be compared to Indiana.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that we're even having this conversation, but
they have
the reality of the situation.
They have one of the easiest schedules in the Big Ten. They have Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, it didn't look like it on paper, but now looking at it, Michigan's not very good. Washington's not very good. Michigan State's not very good. Clearly Nebraska, or maybe Indiana's just really good. And they're going to go in and steamroll, put 70 on all these teams.
Yeah, maybe we should start. I think we are giving credit where credit is due, that Indiana is actually a good football team this year.
Yeah.
But they still, as far as I'm concerned, they're taking on Washington and Michigan, who are both having kind of down years this year. They're both 4-3, unranked, and Indiana gets both of those guys at home. But yeah, still, those are still two teams that I could see very well beat Indiana, obviously. But right now, college football just in and of itself is it's all crazy.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. I know.
It is performing. Yeah. The big games are performing better, and the primetime games aren't disappointing, unlike the NFL. I just think it's like college football is, it's getting big, and I'm glad we're here to cover it for you guys. And we got Nebraska next week. We're going to see what happens. We got a Wednesday
at the Woody, baby.
Wednesday at the Woody after a week off. There was no press conferences this week for the Buckeyes.
None.
Go down. None. So
no Tuesday either.
Hopefully this team, it sees Indiana, sees how they're playing, understands what's going on, and hopefully they're ready. Hopefully they're like, we have to start making statements.
Once again, we're going to find out what kind of mind frame this team is in come Saturday against Nebraska. Do we see, and I don't even necessarily, and that's, once again, it's going to be some silly, Ohio State didn't beat Nebraska 56-7. They only won, 38-3 or something like that. There will be those fans out there that
Nebraska
are going to
scores the first touchdown. Indiana, they haven't trailed all season. They've never trailed at all the whole season.
Indiana.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but once again, we're going to find out what kind of mind frame that this team is in. So we'll see.
All right, guys. Well, hey, follow me on Twitter @TrueSample. Follow.
No, slash you on the
Slash
X.
me on X, dog.
Come on.
@TrueSample / Andy's Wired.
2 weeks in a row,
Wired.
baby.
/ Columbus Wired. What is Columbus Wired's?
Columbus_Wired.
Wired. Slash it. Follow
Slash
us. Share the show with a friend. Chime in the comments. Say what you think. Is Indiana overrated?
Yeah. Yeah, let us know.
What do you think? Are they gonna kick our ass? Are they gonna come into Columbus and take our lunch money?
If they do, holy crap. Yeah.
They do. Ryan Day probably his seat's gonna be really hot. And he Michigan.
Oh, dude. Yeah, well, at this point, you still have to get past
Penn State.
You still have to get past Nebraska, Penn State, and Indiana. I mean, Ohio State does not have a cakewalk here, folks. I'm sorry.
No, but hey, if they handle business and they play they're supposed to, we're in it. We're in it. And like I said before last week, that loss might have been really good. Should be a lot of 2-loss SEC teams. I mean, like, there's going to be a lot. I mean, we don't know how things are going to shake up. It is very competitive this year.
Here's the thing, though, real quick, that I find interesting as far as who's at the top of the Big Ten landscape. You have Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana, all undefeated. And guess what, Drew? None of them play each other. So if Ohio State wants to get into the Big Ten championship game, obviously they play all three of those teams. So Ohio State's destiny, it's in their hands. They are in control. They do not have to rely on other teams knocking off Penn State and Indiana to get to the Big Ten championship game. They can do that themselves.
Yep.
So it's all for the taking right there in front of them. But once again, it's not going to be a cakewalk, folks. It's just not. So we'll see.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Thanks for another episode. We look forward to bringing you another one soon.